Third part. 2 days passed. A band of nobles boarded an OSB aircraft that descended upon the grasslands north of the capital, whereupon Greylancer and his vassals stormed into the clandestine meeting, killing over 20 OSB, all save one, and capturing the traitorous nobles. Greylancer hastened directly for the Privy Council, with his captives in tow, and demanded the immediate assembly of a council board of inquiry. The assembled members of the Privy Council examined Greylancer's complaint and were aghast. The suit disclosed details of the cabal and demanded the dismissal or execution of the current Privy Council members. Also included as part of the demands was the suspension of the planned plasma attack on the frontier. 10 members of the sub-council gathered in the council chamber to conduct the inquiry. On this night, those nobles usually in the position of adjudicating such cases found themselves playing the role of defendants. With Greylancer, who wore a black and white mask over the left side of his face before them, the accused leveled a barrage of questions against the lone plaintiff. What proof do you have? Are you in your right mind? Are you not a suspect yourself in the murder of Chancellor Cornelius? To which Greylancer countered, I come with evidence and witnesses. I am quite sane. The root of the suspicion against me will become clear in the course of this inquiry. Then Greylancer's vassals escorted the OSB captive still in human form, and 2 members of the Privy Council who'd vanished days before, to the witness stand. At once, all color drained out of the accused members' faces. After a medical advisor confirmed that the witnesses were not under the influence of drugs, spells, or other method of supernatural compulsion, each of the witnesses had a turn in confirming the conspiracy. The testimony of the captured OSB, having no reason to lie, proved more effective in corroborating Greylancer's allegations than those of the 2 council members. Page break. In view of these facts, it is evident that current members of the Privy Council have conspired to perpetrate the most heinous of betrayals, to relinquish control of the planet to the OSB. After concluding in a low but forceful voice that shook not only the chambers but also the Privy Council ministry, Greylancer called for the immediate sentencing of the traitors. It was plain to anyone that the plaintiff's request was justified. Yet when one of the sub-council members asked, "Are there any objections?" one of the defendants, Vice-Chancellor Pitaka, offered a surprising rebuttal. Lord Greylancer's accusations in this matter are either all a sham, or nothing more than a misunderstanding. No doubt my colleagues here, much less the OSB, have testified under coercion because they fear for their lives. We are capable of providing ample evidence and testimony to refute the claims made here, but we require several days. But I should think it a waste of time and energy to have to defend ourselves against such preposterous allegations. Nevertheless, these charges, however flimsy, are matters of grave importance that affect the very survival and honor of the Privy Council. I propose, therefore, that our fates be decided by the ultimate mind, who has guided us these 4,000 years. Murmurs of surprise erupted from the sub-council and judge advocates. Several nodded their approval. The presiding members retreated to the inner chambers and returned from the deliberations within a minute. We would like to approve Vice-Chancellor Pitaka's proposal. Lord Greylancer, what say you? I shall defer to your judgment. Within 10 minutes, the ultimate mind emerged from an undisclosed location in the bowels of the central government building and entered the chambers unaided. Though the surrogate of the sacred ancestor was a machine comprised of enormous red triangles stood on their points, it exuded a peculiar vitality like that of flesh and blood. "I will hear your statements," it declared. After the plaintiff and defendants repeated their claims, and statements exactly as before, the ultimate mind fell silent. Then, before a minute passed, it answered, "The plaintiff's request is denied. I declare the defendant not guilty." Page break indicated by a small cross. No one dared voice shock or objection. The word of the sacred ancestor, even in its surrogate form, was absolute. It was a cardinal rule ingrained in every noble's bones. Certainly not every noble was capable of immortalizing his name in history. What Greylancer did next, however, would cement his already well-chronicled reputation in the annals of history. "May I inquire the reason?" he asked calmly. "That is hardly necessary," shouted Vice-Chancellor Pataka. "That will not be necessary," said the ultimate mind. "But, enough. Lord Greylancer," said the sub-council leader, stern. "The sacred ancestor's decision is final." The greater noble rose to his feet. "I should like to request another ruling. This is a matter that concerns not only the nobility but also humanity, and the fate of this world." "A second ruling will change nothing, Lord Greylancer," the ultimate mind answered fairly and evenly. "I ask the ultimate mind to deliberate on another matter," said Vice-Chancellor Pataka, his tone triumphant. "We would like the Privy Council to assume control of the frontier." "I see no objection in making it so." Vice-Chancellor Pataka, Greylancer seethed with palpable anger. "I see you have tampered with the ultimate mind." A single wooden spike pierced Greylancer's neck. It had come from the direction of the ultimate mind. "You insult me with your accusation, Lord Greylancer," said the machine with the imposing shadow. "This council is now concluded. You are dismissed." Greylancer pulled the spike from his neck and bit his lip. It was at this moment the warrior vowed to eliminate the members of the Privy Council. And then the voice added, "This council is declared null and void." Page break indicated by a small cross. It was a deep voice that resonated across the council chambers. Whence had the voice come? Not one noble directed his attention toward the ultimate mind. And the nobles all looked off in different directions, heaven and earth. Their bodies trembled, a phenomenon brought about by the mysterious voice. It can't be. Would they utter the name that they had only several occasions to utter in a lifetime? It can't be. Someone has indeed tampered with the ultimate mind. Vice-Chancellor Pataka, perhaps you discovered the operations manual I left behind. Such a sublime voice. This was no doubt the voice of a missionary from the depths of space. It is as you say, acknowledged Pataka, making no attempt to protest. There was no outcry toward this admission. The nobles present felt nothing, yet it sensed the presence of something extraordinary. The voice continued, seeming to rain down over them from high above. "Vice-Chancellor Pataka, you have acted treacherously against my will to serve your self-interest. Thus the earlier ruling is null and void. The frontier will remain under the discretionary powers of the overseers, as it always has. With regard to the war against the OSB, so long as the aliens contend that their invasion is the will of their deity, and believe that it is just. We must not yield an inch. This is my bidding unto you." The nobles present bowed their heads in silence. "The rest I leave in your hands. The treachery revealed here today is regrettable. However, the reality before us remains. There is but one path for us to walk. Sacred Ancestor," it was Greylancer who spoke up, "whence have you come, and whence will you go?" There was no answer. The nobles recognized that their venerated ancestor was gone. They stared vacantly as if the presence had retreated again to an unknown place, drawn back to the void inside their hearts. Hidden behind their blank faces was a childlike excitement at having laid eyes on the grey man, page break indicated by a small cross. The traitorous members of the Perfect Council were executed on the same day. Greylancer left his adjutants to deal with the aftermath and returned to his childhood home. Laria greeted him at the door. Greylancer entered the parlor. Before he was upon his church sofa, his limbs froze. Suddenly, he felt enervated, an intense lethargy invading his bones. Laria. Bathed in the moonlight before him, a gas mask covering his nose and mouth, was Bruel, Laria's husband. Poor noble, who knew that a string bean of a brother would be the one to take his life. "You stole this blasted trickery from Verosa," said Greylancer through gritted teeth. The smokescreen and time-deceiving incense could both be traced back to Verosa. "That's right," replied Bruel. "In small portions over time, I had others to do my bidding, but perhaps Verosa grew wiser to my deceit. He protected you to the last. He is such a loyal retainer, such as he is. I expect he will continue to serve Laria and me, grief-stricken as we will be by your death. Your backers have all perished. The investigation bureau will soon come for you, at which time I shall ask Verosa to clone me, to act as a decoy. They will assume that they succeeded in destroying. You intend still to join with the OSB. Of course. When the OSB conquer this planet, they will hand over full managerial control to me. We have made a pact." Bruel's hips wobbled as he unsheathed his blade. Such was the skill of a government toad unpracticed in the ways of swordsmanship. He inched timidly forward, stopped short of Greylancer's reach, and raised the sword over his head. In that instant, Greylancer whispered something into the badge on his collar. But Bruel, too intoxicated by the taste of certain victory, paid no notice. "Dear brother, you have always looked down upon my station as civil officer. Perhaps it was you that drove me to conspire with the OSB." Bruel swung the long sword. The blade traced a path that missed wide of its mark. The sword flew out of his hands and skittered across the glass floor as Bruel fell over on his back. An unexpected savior that came to Greylancer's aid. It was the swordsman Shazam. "I came because Gallagher is vulnerable to the time-deceiving incense," said the swordsman, helping the warrior to his feet. "You," said Greylancer, unable to hide his surprise. "I've been traveling with Gallagher ever since Lord Mayling bade me to serve as your retainer." "Then why did you not say so in the catacombs of Mayling Castle?" I could not bring myself to serve a master who would think nothing of leaving behind a retainer suffering in agony. Ah, then why now? I must carry out my master's orders. As while Gallagher impressed upon me repeatedly that I must not form an opinion by your outward conduct alone. Well said Greylancer, and looked down upon his brother-in-law lying at his feet. After hitting his head in the fall, the floor around Brielle was smeared with brain matter. A peculiar emotion, one distinct from scorn, came across the warrior's face. Forlornness. Brother, finish me here. Rasped Brielle, as if it were wringing out his last breath. But brain trauma of this sort would not kill a noble. No, roared Greylancer. You will be punished under noble law. Not that. The fate that awaits me is torture at the hands of half-humans. They harbor a deep-rooted hatred for the nobility, and will inflict that hatred upon my body. Brother, I beg for your mercy. Please, kill me now. Disregarding his brother-in-law's entreaties, and ignoring his bloody outstretched hand, Greylancer said into his calm, "Take this unpardonable traitor into custody." "My sympathies, Lord Greylancer," said Shazam with a bow. Before the swordsman could raise his head, an enormous hand shoved him aside. Reeling, Shazam quickly regained his footing and looked up. Greylancer had already vanished in a burst of blinding light. Brielle was also gone. Shazam sent a ferocious glare upward. A dimensional barrier. That was the name of the weapon that could confine even immortal nobles to another dimension for an eternity. A pale blue aircraft appeared overhead. Shazam reached for the sword behind his back. He unsheathed the blade and threw it at the enemy in one swift motion. The swordsman watched the sword disappear into the void, but not before cutting a red slash across the aircraft. In the blink of an eye, the aircraft glowed white-hot, warped into an elongated, twisted shape, and then disappeared like a vision. Shazam heaved a sigh of relief. "Who brought me back?" asked Greylancer, suddenly standing next to the swordsman again. "Lord Greylancer, how did you—" "I am armed with all manner of contingencies, thanks to a skilled weaponsmith." Greylancer glanced down at the ground where Brielle had lain. Did the OSB come to save Brielle or destroy him? Their arrival was a blessing in disguise for Brielle, whichever the case. Looking up in the air, Greylancer asked, "Who was it that brought me back? Have you any idea?" "I'm afraid I do not," answered Shazam, politely and respectfully. Above him the vestiges of the brilliant light from whence the OSB came twinkled, then disappeared into the darkness. Then Shazam dropped to one knee and said, "You have saved my life. I shall repay this debt with my life. It would be my honor to serve as your retainer. Do as you wish." Greylancer grunted. The effects of the time-deceiving incense were beginning to wear off. Even a plot to seize the world can come to naught in one night. Such a pity. Betraying these words, two fangs gleamed from beneath a cynical smile. "We fly for the frontier tonight. To my territory. To home. Yes, my lord. After me, Shazam. Do not tarry." Greylancer strode off toward the frontier, toward the battleground against the OSB. The noble's path was unerring and true. Noble V Greylancer, written by Hideyuki Kikuchi, and